Why doesn't mommy eat? The fork hit the plate. Emily Carter stopped breathing. Her 8-year-old son stared at her from across the booth. Not angry, not crying, just waiting for an answer she didn't have. One plate, 2 children, nothing for her. She had been starving herself for months so they could survive, and tonight, in a half-dead diner on Christmas Eve, her boy called the lie out loud. She reached for his hand. Her fingers were shaking. Behind her, the door swung open and 7 Hell's Angels walked in. Leather, boots, the kind of men the world crosses the street to avoid. One of them heard the boy's question, and it broke him. Because 35 years ago, he asked his mother the same thing. She never answered. She died instead. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to our channel and follow this journey to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. Emily Carter had not eaten in 2 days, not because she forgot, not because she wasn't hungry, but because the last $11 in her wallet had to stretch until January 2nd, and she had already done the math 6 times in her head. Every time, the answer came back the same. 2 children, 1 plate, no room for her. She told herself it was fine. She told herself she had eaten something earlier, even though she hadn't. She told herself that hunger was just a feeling and feelings pass. That's what she had been doing for the last 14 months. Telling herself things that weren't true so she could keep moving forward. But Caleb's question stripped every single lie away. Why doesn't mommy eat? He didn't ask it loudly. He didn't whine. He didn't even look upset. He asked it the way a child asks about weather, like it was simply a thing he noticed and wanted to understand. And that was the part that destroyed her. Sophie, his twin sister, put her fork down immediately. She pushed the plate toward Emily without a word. Here, Mom, you can have the rest. Emily shook her head. No, sweetheart, Mommy already ate before we came. No, you didn't, Caleb said. Emily's throat tightened. Caleb, you always say that. You always say you already ate, but you never eat. Not at home, not here, not anywhere. Sophie's eyes were already red. She pulled her coat sleeves over her hands, which she only did when she was trying not to cry. Emily reached across the table and held both of their hands. Her grip was firm, but her fingers were shaking. Listen to me, both of you. Mommy is fine, I promise. Then eat something, Caleb said. Right now, eat something and I'll believe you. Silence. Emily looked down at the plate. Half a stack of pancakes, 2 strips of bacon, a small pile of scrambled eggs that had already gone cold. She could feel the waitress watching from behind the counter. She could feel the weight of the diner pressing against her chest. She picked up a fork. She cut a small piece of pancake and her hand stopped. Because her brain, the part of her that had been calculating survival for over a year, whispered the truth she couldn't escape. Every bite she took was a bite her children wouldn't have tomorrow. She put the fork back down. See, Caleb whispered, you can't. Emily closed her eyes. A tear slipped sideways across her cheek, catching the dull light from the window. She wiped it fast, too fast, like she could erase it before her children noticed. They noticed. Sophie climbed out of her seat, walked around the booth, and pressed herself into Emily's side. Caleb followed. They didn't say anything. They just held on. 2 small bodies wrapped around a woman who had been trying to hold the world together with nothing but willpower and love. The waitress, a woman in her 50s named Gail, set a glass of water on the table without being asked. She lingered for half a second, mouth open like she wanted to say something, then walked away. Emily whispered into her children's hair, "We're going to be okay." She didn't believe it, but she said it anyway, because that's what mothers do when the truth is too heavy for small hands to carry. 14 months earlier, Emily Carter had a house. It wasn't big, a 2-bedroom rental on the east side of Bozeman with a cracked driveway and a kitchen window that stuck in the summer. But it was theirs. She had curtains she picked out herself, a coffee maker that only worked on the second try, A drawer full of crayon drawings the twins made every Sunday morning while she cooked breakfast. She had a husband too, Kevin Carter, high school sweetheart, married at 22, a construction foreman who worked long hours and came home smelling like sawdust in cold air. He wasn't perfect. He drank too much on weekends, spent too much on things they didn't need, and had a temper that flared like a match in dry wind. But he showed up. He paid rent. He carried the kids on his shoulders through the county fair every August. Then one Thursday in October, Kevin didn't come home. Emily called his phone 14 times. She called the job site. She called his brother. She called the hospital. At 11:47 p.m., a police officer knocked on her door. Kevin hadn't been in an accident. He hadn't been hurt. He had simply left. Packed a bag during his lunch break, emptied the savings account, every cent, and driven south with a woman Emily had never heard of. The officer wasn't there to deliver news about a crime. He was there because Kevin had dropped off a note at the station. 2 lines, written on the back of a gas station receipt. "I can't do this anymore. Don't look for me." Emily read it 3 times standing in the doorway, the officer shifting uncomfortably on the porch, her children sleeping 10 feet behind her in a room covered with glow-in-the-dark stars. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She thanked the officer, closed the door, walked to the kitchen, and sat down at the table in the dark. She sat there until sunrise. Then she made breakfast for the twins and told them Daddy had to go away for work. That was the first lie. It wouldn't be the last. The months that followed stripped Emily down to bone. Kevin had cleaned out everything. The savings account, the emergency fund, even the small college account she had started when the twins were born. He left behind debt she didn't know existed, a credit card maxed out at $9,000, a personal loan for $6,000 more, both in her name because he had convinced her to co-sign just for the credit score. She called a lawyer. The lawyer said she could file for divorce and pursue child support, but Kevin had vanished. No forwarding address, no active employment record, no phone. The legal process would take months, maybe longer, and cost money she didn't have. She called her mother in Nebraska. Her mother listened for 10 minutes, then said, "I told you not to marry that man." Then she hung up. Emily stared at the phone for a long time after that. She picked up shifts at a grocery store, then a second job cleaning offices at night. She arranged childcare through a neighbor who charged $40 a week. Cheap, but still $40 she had to fight for every Friday. The landlord gave her 60 days grace on rent, then 30 more. Then a letter slid under her door with legal language she didn't fully understand, but felt in her chest like a stone. By August, she was out. She moved the twins into a motel on Route 12. Weekly rate, shared bathroom down the hall, a heater that groaned like a dying animal, and a lock on the door that she reinforced every night with a chair. She told the kids it was an adventure. Like camping, she said, smiling so hard her jaw ached. But with a TV. Sophie believed her. Caleb didn't. Caleb never believed her. He watched everything with those quiet, careful eyes too old for an 8-year-old face. She lost the grocery job in November when the store cut hours. The cleaning job paid just enough to cover the motel and a few groceries, but Christmas was coming, and she could feel the edges of survival closing in. By December 23rd, she had $11 in a tank of gas that was closer to empty than full. She drove to the diner because it was warm, because the coffee was $1.50, and because her children deserved to sit at a real table on Christmas Eve, even if she could only afford one plate between them. She ordered the Sunrise Special, $7.95, and split it in half. One half for Sophie, one half for Caleb, nothing for her. She told herself it was fine, and then Caleb asked the question. The diner had 6 booths, a counter with 9 stools, and a jukebox in the corner that hadn't worked since 2019. Gail had been waitressing there for 12 years, long enough to know that the people who came in on Christmas Eve were either passing through or had nowhere else to go. Emily was the second type. Gail had been watching her since she walked in. She saw the way Emily counted the cash in her wallet under the table, lips moving silently. She saw the way Emily ordered without looking at the menu, already knowing what she could afford. She saw the way Emily's smile never reached her eyes. Gail had seen that smile before. On her own sister, on two neighbors, on the woman in the mirror 20 years ago when her first husband took everything and left her standing in an empty apartment with a baby on her hip. She wanted to help, but the diner owner was strict about comps, and Gail had already been warned twice this month for giving away free coffee. So she did the only thing she could. She refilled Emily's water. She brought extra napkins. She smiled at the kids. Small kindnesses that cost nothing but meant everything to someone sitting in the dark. Then the door opened, and the temperature in the room changed. There were 7 of them. They came in the way men like that always come in, filling the doorway first, then the room, then the silence. Leather vests over heavy coats, boots that left wet prints on the tile. The Hells Angels patch visible on every back like a brand burned into the air. The couple in booth 4 stopped talking. A man at the counter gripped his coffee cup a little tighter. Gail straightened up behind the register, her smile becoming professional, the kind she wore when she needed to be careful. Emily pulled Sophie closer without thinking. Caleb looked up, curious but not afraid. Children at that age don't read patches. They read faces. And the faces coming through that door were tired, wind-burned, and hard in ways that had nothing to do with anger. At the front of the group walked Ryan Callahan. The others called him Stone, not because he wanted the name, because he earned it. 23 years in the club, a reputation built on silence, loyalty, and a willingness to do what needed doing without flinching. He had a blonde beard going gray at the edges, hands thick with calluses, and blue eyes that gave away nothing unless he chose to let them. Stone didn't talk much. He didn't need to. When he walked into a room, the room adjusted. People moved aside, conversations lowered, chairs turned. He had been riding since dawn, 400 miles from a chapter meeting in Billings, and all he wanted was hot coffee and something that would sit heavy in his stomach, long enough to get him through the last 60 miles home. He chose the booth closest to the door. His men filed in around him, filling 2 tables and 3 counter stools. Orders came fast. Voices were low. Gail moved efficiently between them, refilling and smiling and keeping her distance exactly right. Stone sat with his back to the wall, the way he always did. He wrapped his hands around the coffee mug and let the heat work its way into his knuckles. His eyes swept the room once. Habit, not suspicion. Cataloging exits, faces, potential problems. His gaze passed over the couple in booth 4, over the man at the counter, over Gail, and then it landed on the corner booth. A woman, 2 kids, 1 plate. He looked away, then looked back. The woman was smiling, the kids were eating, but something was wrong. A frequency only people who had been hungry could detect. The way she watched the food leave the plate, the way her hands stayed in her lap, the way her eyes tracked every bite like she was mentally dividing it into hours of survival. Stone's jaw tightened. He picked up his coffee, took a slow sip, set it down, and then he heard it. The boy's voice, small, clear, cutting through the hum of the room like a blade through smoke. "Why doesn't Mommy eat?" Stone's hand stopped mid-reach for his cup. The words hit him in a place he had spent 35 years trying to wall off. A place he had buried under miles of highway, under leather, under the weight of a name that meant something different to everyone who heard it. He was 8 years old again, a trailer in Fresno, August heat pressing against tin walls, his mother standing at the stove, scraping the last of a can of beans onto a plate she would hand him with a smile that looked exactly like the one the woman in the corner booth was wearing right now. "Aren't you going to eat, Mom?" "I already ate, baby. I'm not hungry." She was always not hungry, every single night, for months, until her clothes hung off her frame and her hands shook when she thought he wasn't looking. He found out later, years later, long after she was gone, that she had been eating once every 3 days, sometimes less. She worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. And every dollar that could have gone to food went to keeping the lights on so her son could do his homework. She died when Stone was 14. Heart failure, the doctors said. But Stone knew the truth. She starved. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, invisibly, the way mothers do when they decide their children's survival matters more than their own. And now in a diner on Christmas Eve, 35 years later, a boy was asking the same question Stone had asked. And a mother was telling the same lie his mother had told. And Stone could feel every wall he had ever built beginning to crack. "You all right, brother?" The voice came from his left. Danny Wrench Morrison, youngest patch member at the table. 28, wiry, with tattoos running from his wrist to his jaw, and a mouth that never stopped moving. Stone didn't answer. "Stone, hey, you good?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine. You look like somebody just told you your dog died." "Drop it." Wrench held up both hands, leaned back. "All right, dropping it." But he followed Stone's line of sight to the corner booth. He saw the woman, the kids, the single plate. "Rough deal," Wrench muttered quietly. "Christmas Eve and all." Stone said nothing. Across the diner, Caleb had stopped eating entirely. He sat with his arms crossed, staring at his mother with an expression that didn't belong on a child's face. "I'm not eating anymore," he said. Emily's voice was gentle but strained. "Caleb, please, you need to finish." "Not until you eat something." "Honey, I told you." "You're lying." "You always lie about this." The word landed like a slap. Emily flinched. Sophie looked between them, terrified, not of anger, but of the things she could feel breaking open between her mother and her brother. "Caleb Michael Carter, you do not speak to me that way." "Then stop lying to me." "I am not." "Dad lied too. He lied and then he left." "Are you going to leave too?" The diner went quiet. Not because everyone heard, most didn't, but the few who did felt the air change the way it changes before a storm, when the pressure drops and everything goes still. Emily's face crumpled, not slowly, all at once, like a building that had been standing on nothing, finally giving way. She pulled Caleb into her chest so fast he didn't have time to resist. She held him there, one hand on the back of his head, and she whispered something that only he could hear. "I will never leave you. Do you hear me? Never. Not ever. I will be right here until you're old enough to tell me to go. And even then, I won't go far." Caleb's arms slowly uncrossed. His small hands gripped the back of her coat. His shoulders began to shake. Sophie pressed into Emily's other side, crying silently the way she always did, mouth closed, eyes streaming, not making a sound. Gail turned away from the register. She pressed her hand against her mouth and stared at the wall until she could breathe again. And Stone watched it all. Every second, every word. He felt something moving in his chest, something heavy and alive that he had been carrying for decades without knowing its name. It wasn't pity. Pity is what people feel from a distance. This was recognition. This was a mirror. The chairs scraped against the floor. Every single one of them was a little bit scared. The chair scraped against the floor. Every Hell's Angels member at both tables looked up simultaneously. They knew that movement. They knew what it meant when Stone stood without warning. It meant something was about to happen. Wrench straightened. "What are you doing?" Stone didn't answer. He walked across the diner, not fast, not slow, each step deliberate, each footfall heavy enough to feel through the floor. Emily saw him coming. Her entire body went rigid. She released the children and pushed them behind her instinctively, one arm out, shielding them the way a person shields something precious from an approaching threat. Her eyes were wide. Her breathing was fast. She had seen the patches. She knew the reputation. She was a woman alone with 2 children in a half-empty diner on a dark highway, and a man twice her size was walking toward her with a face carved from stone. Every survival instinct she had screamed at her to move. She didn't move, because moving meant letting go of her children, and that was the one thing Emily Carter would never do. Stone stopped at the edge of the booth. He looked at Sophie first, then Caleb, then Emily. The fear in her eyes hit him harder than he expected. He recognized that too. His mother had worn that same look every time a landlord knocked, every time a bill collector called, every time the world reminded her that she was alone and outmatched. He reached into his back pocket. Emily's breath caught. He pulled out a wallet, cracked leather, worn soft from years of road and rain. He set it on the table between the salt shaker and the napkin dispenser. "Let them eat," he said. His voice was low, rough, the way gravel sounds under tires. "All of it, whatever they want." Emily stared at the wallet, then at him. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. "Dessert too," he said, "and meals for tomorrow. Gail can pack them." I can't." "You can. You don't even know me." "I know enough." "How? How could you possibly?" Stone looked at the plate. One plate, two children, empty space where a third setting should be. "Because I was him," Stone said quietly. He didn't point at Caleb. He didn't need to. 35 years ago, same question, same lie, same plate. Emily's hand went to her mouth. "My mother gave everything she had to keep me alive," Stone said, "and it killed her, slowly, quietly, in a way nobody noticed until it was too late." He leaned forward slightly, not threatening, not looming, just close enough for his words to land without the rest of the room hearing. "You don't get to do that to yourself. Those kids need you alive. Not brave, not strong, alive." Emily's tears came then, not the single tear she had wiped away before. These were the ones she had been holding back for 14 months, the ones that carried every sleepless night, every empty cabinet, every lie she told her children to keep them from knowing how close to the edge they really were. She cried the way people cry when someone finally sees them, not with noise, with relief. Caleb looked up at Stone with those quiet, old eyes. "Are you going to help my mom?" Stone held the boy's gaze. "Yeah," he said, "I am." Caleb studied him for a long moment, measuring him the way children measure adults, not by words, but by something deeper, something instinctive. Then he nodded. "Okay," Caleb said, "because she won't help herself." The words hit Stone like a truck, because they were true, and because they were exactly what Stone would have said about his own mother, if anyone had ever thought to ask. Stone turned back toward his table. He didn't say a word. He didn't wave anyone over. He didn't signal. He didn't need to. Wrench was already standing. So was Hank, the oldest member, mid-60s, silver hair pulled back. A man who had buried 2 wives and still woke up every morning because his granddaughter called him every Sunday at 7. He had heard enough. He pulled a fold of cash from inside his vest and walked it to the register. Tommy followed, then Davis, then the 2 prospects who had been sitting at the counter pretending to mind their own business. One by one they rose. No announcement, no performance. No one pulled out a phone. No one said a word about what they were doing or why. They just walked to the register and added to the tab. Gail watched the pile of bills grow. Her hands were shaking. She had to count it twice because the first time her eyes were too blurred to read the numbers. $467 for a family of 3 in a diner on Christmas Eve. She looked at Stone. He shook his head once, a small, sharp movement that said everything. "Don't make this a moment. Just let it be." Gail nodded. She understood. Some kindnesses aren't meant to be witnessed. They're meant to be felt. She walked to the corner booth with a fresh pot of coffee and a smile that was real for the first time all night. "Honey, the kitchen's still open. What do the kids want?" Sophie's eyes went wide. "Anything?" Gail laughed softly. Anything on the menu, and off it too if I can swing it. Can I have hot chocolate? Sophie whispered, like she was asking for something impossible. With whipped cream and everything? Sophie looked at Emily. Emily nodded, unable to speak. Whipped cream, Sophie said, barely breathing. Please. Caleb ordered a burger. Then after a pause, he added, and can my mom have the chicken soup? She likes chicken soup. Gail's pen stopped moving on the notepad. She looked at Caleb, this small, serious boy who had been carrying the weight of his mother's hunger on his shoulders without anyone asking him to. Chicken soup for Mom, she said, coming right up. Emily pressed her forehead against Caleb's and whispered, when did you get so brave? I'm not brave, he said. I'm just tired of watching you disappear. The food came in waves. Pancakes, soup, a burger stacked high, hot chocolate with a cloud of whipped cream that made Sophie gasp, pie, cherry, because Gail remembered it was the special, and she had already decided that this family was getting everything she could give. Emily ate the chicken soup slowly. Each spoonful was a surrender, not of weakness but of the lies she had been telling herself for months, that she could keep giving without receiving, that she could keep burning without fuel, that love alone was enough to keep a body alive. It isn't. Love is a reason to live, but a body still needs food. Caleb watched his mother eat with an expression that finally, for the first time that night, looked like a child's face. Relief. Simple, uncomplicated relief. Sophie drank her hot chocolate with both hands around the mug, whipped cream on her nose, smiling at nothing and everything. And across the diner, Stone sat in his booth and didn't touch his own meal. Wrench noticed. Hey, your food's getting cold. I know. You going to eat? Stone watched Emily lift the spoon to her lips again. He watched Caleb relax into the booth like a knot finally coming undone. He watched Sophie lick whipped cream off her upper lip and giggle. Yeah, Stone said, I'm going to eat. He picked up his fork, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, food tasted like something more than fuel. It tasted like the thing he had been missing. It tasted like the thing he had been running from. It tasted like mercy. Emily didn't know how long they sat there. Long enough for the food to be eaten and the mugs to be emptied and the children to lean against her with the heavy, drowsy weight of full stomachs and warm bodies. Long enough for the fear to loosen its grip. She looked across the diner at Stone. He wasn't watching her anymore. He was staring out the window at the snow falling under the parking lot light, his coffee untouched, his face unreadable. She wanted to thank him. She wanted to walk over and say something that matched the size of what he had done. But every word she tried to assemble in her head felt too small. So she did the only thing she could. She caught his eye, and she nodded. One nod, slow, full of everything she couldn't say. Stone nodded back, and in that silent exchange, between a mother who had been drowning and a man who had been running, something passed. Not a debt, not an obligation, not charity, understanding. The rarest currency in the world, and the one that cost nothing to give, but everything to earn. Up at him with eyes that were still red, up at him with eyes that were still red, but no longer broken. Stone slid something across the table, a small card, handwritten, an address, a phone number, a name. There's a place, he said, warehouse on the north side. The chapter keeps it stocked every winter. Groceries, heating supplies, job contacts, no paperwork, no cameras, no one asking questions you don't want to answer. Emily took the card. Her fingers trembled. Go tomorrow, Stone said. Tell them Stone sent you. They'll take care of the rest. Why are you doing this? She asked. Not suspicious, not doubting, just needing to understand. Stone looked at Caleb, who was watching him again with those quiet, ancient eyes. Because someone should have done it for my mother, he said, and no one did. He held Emily's gaze for one more second. Then he turned and walked back to his men. Wrench was waiting. The others were pulling on gloves and adjusting helmets. Ready? Wrench asked. Yeah. They moved toward the door, boots on tile, leather creaking, the cold rushing in as the door opened. Caleb raised his hand and waved. A small wave, not shy exactly, more like careful, like he was waving at something he wasn't sure was real. Wrench waved back. Hank nodded. Tommy tipped an invisible hat. Stone paused in the doorway. He didn't wave. He didn't turn around. But his hand gripped the doorframe for just a moment. A moment so brief no one noticed except Gail, who had been watching him the whole time. Then he was gone. The engines started, one by one, then all together, until the parking lot vibrated with the sound of machines and men moving back into the night. Emily sat in the booth, holding the card in one hand and her sleeping daughter in the other, listening to the sound of motorcycles fading into the snow. Caleb pressed his face against the cold window and watched the taillights disappear. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby." He wasn't lying. Emily looked at the card, at the address, at the name written in rough, blocky letters. "No," she said, "he wasn't." Caleb leaned his head against the glass. "I could tell," he said quietly. "Liars don't have eyes like that." Emily pulled him close. She kissed the top of his head. She held both of her children in the warm light of a diner on Christmas Eve. And for the first time in 14 months, she let herself believe that tomorrow might be different. Not perfect, not easy, but different. And sometimes different is enough to keep a person alive. The engines had barely faded when Gail locked the front door of the diner. She didn't do it because it was closing time. She did it because Emily Carter was still sitting in that corner booth, holding a handwritten card like it was the last thing keeping her upright. And Gail knew, the way women who have survived know, that what this mother needed right now was 5 more minutes without the world pushing in. Gail poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down across from Emily without asking. "You don't have to talk," Gail said, "but you don't have to leave yet either." Emily looked at her. Her eyes were swollen, her face raw from crying, but something in her posture had shifted. Not strength exactly, something before strength. The moment when a person stops falling and realizes the ground is under them again. "I don't know what just happened," Emily whispered. "Something good," Gail said. "That's what happened. And I know it probably feels strange because you've been carrying everything alone for so long that someone helping feels like a trick. But it's not a trick. That man meant every word." "You know him?" Gail shook her head. "I know his type. Hard men who remember being soft. They're the most dangerous kind, not to you, to themselves, because they'll tear their own walls down to reach somebody who's hurting the way they once hurt." Emily looked at the card again. The handwriting was rough, the letters pressed deep into the paper like stone had been gripping the pen too hard. She ran her thumb across the ink. "He said his mother died. I heard. He said no one helped her. I heard that too." Emily's voice cracked. "I'm so tired, Gail. I'm so tired of pretending I'm not falling apart." Gail reached across the table and took Emily's hand. She held it firmly, the way you hold someone who is standing at the edge of something and doesn't know which direction they're leaning. "Then stop pretending," Gail said. "Go to that address tomorrow. Let somebody catch you. Just this once." Emily closed her eyes. Sophie shifted against her shoulder, murmuring something in her sleep. Caleb was still awake, still watching, still quiet. "Mom," Caleb said, "we should go." Emily opened her eyes. She looked at her son, this boy who had been carrying the weight of her silence for months, who had asked the question nobody else had the courage to ask, who had forced the truth into the open simply because he loved her too much to let her disappear. "Yeah, baby," she said, "we should go." Gail packed 3 bags of food. She didn't charge for any of it. She wrote her phone number on a napkin and pressed it into Emily's palm. "You call me if you need anything. I mean it, anything." Emily nodded. She gathered her children. She walked to the door, and just before she stepped into the cold, she turned back. "Thank you," she said, "for the water earlier when you just brought it without me asking." Gail's face tightened. You notice that? I notice everything, Emily said. When you're invisible, you learn to see the people who still see you. Then she was gone. Into the snow, into the night, into whatever came next. And Gail stood in the empty diner, pressing the napkin she had given Emily against her own chest, crying for reasons she couldn't fully name. 60 miles north, Stone pulled off the highway. He didn't signal. He didn't slow gradually. He just cut the engine and rolled to a stop on the shoulder, boots dragging against frozen asphalt. Wrench pulled up behind him, then Hank, then the others one by one, until 7 motorcycles sat idling in a line along the dark road. Wrench killed his engine and walked forward. "What's going on? You break down?" Stone was sitting on his bike, both hands on the handlebars, staring at nothing. "Stone, talk to me." "I'm fine." "You pulled over in the middle of nowhere in December. That's not fine. That's the opposite of fine." Stone didn't answer for a long time. The wind cut across the open highway, carrying snow sideways. The other men stayed on their bikes, watching, waiting. They had ridden with Stone long enough to know that when he went quiet, you didn't push. You waited. Finally, Stone spoke. "My mother's name was Diane." Wrench blinked. In 5 years of riding with Stone, he had never heard him mention his mother. Not once, not in passing, not drunk, not angry, not at 3 in the morning on a long ride when men sometimes crack open and let things slip. "Diane Callahan," Stone continued. "She was 31 when she died. 31. Younger than that woman in the diner." Wrench didn't say anything. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, and listened. "She worked 2 jobs, cleaned houses in the morning, waited tables at night, and every single evening she would make 1 plate of food, put it in front of me, and tell me she already ate." Stone's voice was steady, flat, the way a man sounds when he is reciting facts he has repeated to himself so many times they have worn smooth like river stones. "I believed her, every time, because I was a kid and kids believe their mothers. That's what kids do." He paused. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something he couldn't swallow. "She collapsed at work, waitressing, dropped a tray of plates and went down. They called an ambulance. By the time I got to the hospital, she was already on a machine." Wrench exhaled slowly. "Heart failure. That's what the death certificate said. But her body weighed 93 pounds. 93 pounds on a woman who was 5'7". That's not heart failure. That's starvation. That's a mother who fed her son and forgot to feed herself until her body couldn't run anymore." Stone looked at Wrench for the first time. His eyes were dry, but something behind them was burning. "I was 14. I went into the system. Foster homes, group homes, places where nobody asked if you were hungry because nobody cared. I learned fast. I learned that the world doesn't hand you anything, and if you want to survive, you build walls. You get hard. You join something bigger than yourself so you never feel that small again." He tapped the patch on his vest. "This was my wall. For 23 years, this was the thing that kept me from being that kid in the hospital watching his mother die through a glass window." Wrench's throat tightened. He had his own story. Every man in the club did. That was the unspoken bond. Not the bikes, not the road, not the leather. The pain. The thing that drove each of them to seek belonging in a brotherhood the world feared and misunderstood. "And then tonight," Stone said, "that boy asked the same question I asked, word for word. Like God or the universe or whatever the hell is running this thing decided to put a mirror in front of me and make me look. He gripped the handlebars until his knuckles went white. I can't ride away from this one, Danny." Wrench flinched. Stone never used his real name, not in 5 years. The fact that he used it now told Wrench everything he needed to know about what was happening inside the man sitting in front of him. "So what do you want to do?" Wrench asked. Stone was quiet for a long time. The snow kept falling. The engines kept ticking as they cooled. Somewhere far off, a truck horn sounded on the interstate. I want to make sure she gets to that warehouse tomorrow, Stone said. I want to make sure those kids have food for more than one night. And I want to make sure that what happened to my mother doesn't happen to her. That's a lot of want for a man who says he doesn't care about anything. Stone looked at him. I never said I didn't care. I said I didn't show it. There's a difference. Wrench nodded slowly. All right, so we ride back? No, not tonight. She's scared enough. We show up again, we make it worse. But tomorrow I'm calling the warehouse, making sure they know she's coming, making sure they give her everything she needs. And after that? Stone stared down the dark highway. After that, I don't know. I haven't thought past tomorrow in 20 years. Wrench almost smiled. That's probably the most honest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. Stone kicked the engine back to life. The roar filled the silence, and for a moment, everything was noise and vibration and forward motion. The things Stone understood, the things that had always been enough. But tonight, for the first time, they weren't. Emily drove back to the motel with the heater on full and the radio off. Sophie slept in the back seat, wrapped in her coat like a cocoon. Caleb sat beside his sister, awake, staring out the window at the dark shapes of trees moving past like ghosts. Emily's hands were steady on the wheel, but her mind was racing. She kept replaying Stone's words, not the ones about food or the warehouse or meals for tomorrow. The other ones. The ones that hit her in the chest like a fist wrapped in velvet. You don't get to do that to yourself. Those kids need you alive. Alive. Not surviving, not enduring. Alive. She had been so focused on keeping her children fed, clothed, sheltered, that she had forgotten the most basic truth of all. They needed her. Not her sacrifice, not her suffering. Her, breathing, present, whole. She pulled into the motel parking lot and sat there for a moment after she killed the engine. The silence was enormous. Mom? Caleb's voice came from the back seat. Yeah? Are we going to the place on the card? I don't know yet, baby. Why not? Emily stared at the motel door. Room 14. A number she had come to hate. A door she had come to dread opening, because every time she did, the smallness of their life hit her all over again. Because it's hard to let people help you when you've been doing everything alone. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made Emily grip the steering wheel so hard, her knuckles turned white. Maybe that's why you're so tired. Emily pressed her forehead against the wheel. She didn't cry. She was empty of tears. But her breath came ragged, like her body was trying to process something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. When did you grow up? She whispered. When you stopped eating, Caleb said simply. Emily sat up. She turned around and looked at her son, really looked at him, past the pale hair and the quiet eyes and the serious mouth. She saw what she had been too exhausted to see for months. He wasn't just watching her. He was keeping count. How many meals she skipped. How many times she said she wasn't hungry. How many nights she sat at the kitchen table in the dark after she thought the kids were asleep, staring at bills she couldn't pay with hands she couldn't stop from shaking. He had been keeping a record of her disappearance, and he had been doing it alone. I'm sorry, Emily said. The words came out broken. I'm so sorry, Caleb. I didn't know you could see all of that. I see everything, Mom, just like you do. Emily reached back and took his hand. She held it tight. We're going, tomorrow, first thing. You promise? I promise. Real promise? Not the kind Dad used to make? The mention of Kevin hit like a punch to the sternum. Emily swallowed hard. Real promise. The kind that doesn't break. Caleb squeezed her hand once. Then he let go, unbuckled Sophie's seatbelt, and gently shook his sister awake. Come on, Soph. We're home. Sophie mumbled something incoherent, and Caleb guided her out of the car with the patient steadiness of a boy who had been practicing adulthood long before anyone gave him permission. Emily watched them walk to the door, her son, her daughter, the two reasons she got out of bed every morning, the two reasons she hadn't crumbled completely. She grabbed the bags of food Gail had packed. She grabbed the card with Stone's handwriting. She grabbed the napkin with Gail's phone number. And she walked into room 14 carrying more than she had carried in months. Not just food, not just phone numbers. Hope. The kind she had forgotten existed. She put the children to bed. Sophie fell asleep instantly, the way children do when their stomachs are full and the world feels safe. Caleb lay on his side, facing the wall, but Emily could tell by his breathing that he was still awake. She sat on the edge of his bed. Caleb, yeah? I need you to hear something, and I need you to believe it. He rolled over. His eyes caught the dim light from the parking lot coming through the curtain. I'm going to get us out of this. I don't know how yet. I don't know when, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to start by doing the thing I should have done a long time ago. What's that? Letting someone help. Caleb studied her face the way he always did, looking for the lie, testing the words against the expression, measuring the distance between what she said and what she meant. This time the distance was 0. Okay, he said. I believe you. He closed his eyes. Within minutes his breathing slowed and his body relaxed into the mattress with the total surrender of a child who has finally been given permission to stop worrying. Emily sat there in the dark, listening to her children breathe. She held Stone's card between her fingers, turning it over and over, feeling the rough texture of the paper, the grooves where the pen had pressed. She thought about Diane Callahan, a woman she had never met, a woman who had done exactly what Emily was doing, giving everything, eating nothing, disappearing one skipped meal at a time. Diane Callahan died at 31. Emily was 32. The math was terrifying. She put the card on the nightstand. She lay down between her children. She pulled them both close, one on each side, their small, warm bodies pressed against hers. And she made a decision. Not a dramatic decision, not a movie moment decision, a quiet one, the kind that happens in the dark when no one is watching and no one will ever know. She decided to live, not to survive, not to endure, not to hold on until things got better. To live, to eat, to accept help, to stop treating her own body like something expendable. She decided to be the mother her children needed, not a ghost who smiled and pretended, but a person who sat at the table and ate with them. It was the smallest decision in the world, and it was the hardest one she had ever made. She closed her eyes. She pulled her children tighter, and for the first time in 14 months, Emily Carter fell asleep without calculating how many days of hunger she had left. Across the state, Stone lay in his own bed, boots still on, staring at the ceiling. His phone sat on his chest. He had already made 3 calls: the warehouse manager, the chapter treasurer, a woman named Rita who ran the grocery distribution every Wednesday and Saturday. Everything was set. Emily Carter would walk into that warehouse tomorrow and find everything she needed: food, contacts, resources, a path forward that didn't require her to starve. But Stone couldn't sleep, because helping Emily hadn't silenced the thing inside him. It had amplified it. The memory of his mother wasn't fading. It was sharpening, becoming clearer, more detailed, more painful. He could see her face now, really see it. Not the blurred, distant image he had carried for years, but the real one, the thin one, the one with hollowed cheeks in dark circles and a smile that never matched her eyes. He had spent 23 years running from that face. Tonight, it caught up to him. He sat up in bed. He pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw stars. Then he reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in over 3 years. It rang 4 times. A voice answered, tired, cautious, female. Ryan? Hey, Maggie. Silence, a long one. It's 2 in the morning. I know. You don't call me at 2 in the morning. You don't call me at all. I know that too. So why are you calling? Stone opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I need to ask you something about Mom. The silence that followed was different from the first one. Heavier, loaded. Maggie Callahan, Stone's older sister by 4 years, the one who got out, the one who moved to Portland and built a life that didn't include leather or engines or the things that came with them, exhaled slowly on the other end of the line. "What about Mom?" she asked, and her voice was shaking. Stone gripped the phone so hard the case cracked against his palm. He hadn't heard Maggie's voice in 3 years, not since their last fight, the one that ended with her screaming that he had turned into the very thing their mother feared he would become. He had hung up that night and told himself he didn't need her, told himself family was just a word people use to guilt you into staying soft. But tonight, soft was the only thing that felt real. "Did you know?" Stone asked. "Know what, Ryan?" "About Mom, about the food. Did you know she wasn't eating?" Maggie didn't answer immediately. He could hear her breathing, slow, controlled, the way a person breathes when they're trying to decide how much truth they can handle at 2 in the morning. "Yes," she said finally. "I knew." The word dropped like a stone into dark water. "You knew," Stone repeated. Not a question, an accusation. "I was 12, Ryan. I was a kid. I knew the way kids know, not with facts but with feelings. I could feel her getting smaller. I could feel the lies getting bigger. But I didn't have the words for it. And even if I did, who was I going to tell? You could have told me. You were 8. You were eating the food she gave you and believing every word she said because that's what 8-year-olds do. What was I supposed to say? Hey, little brother, Mom's starving herself so we can live. You think that would have helped? Stone's jaw locked. He wanted to argue. He wanted to rage. But he couldn't because she was right. I tried to help her, Maggie continued, her voice thinning. I started eating less so there would be more for her. I told her I wasn't hungry at lunch. I told her my stomach hurt at dinner. I thought if I ate less, she would eat more. Did it work? No, she just gave my portion to you. Stone closed his eyes. The math of his mother's love rearranged itself in his head. Not one child she was sacrificing for, 2. But Maggie had been sacrificing alongside her, and Stone had never known. Why didn't you ever tell me this? He asked. Because you left, Ryan. You left and you joined that club and you became someone I couldn't reach. Every time I tried to talk about Mom, you shut down. You walked out. You rode off. You built this whole life around not feeling anything, and I got tired of banging on a door that wouldn't open. I'm opening it now. Maggie laughed, not cruel, exhausted, the laugh of a woman who had waited years for this phone call and had given up believing it would come. Why now? She asked. What happened? Stone told her. He told her about the diner, about Emily, about the one plate and the 2 children and the boy who asked the question that shattered everything Stone had spent decades building. When he finished, Maggie was crying. He could hear it, not loud, not dramatic, just the steady, quiet sound of a woman releasing something she had been carrying since she was 12 years old. Her name was really Diane, Maggie whispered. People forget that. They forget she had a name. She wasn't just your mom or my mom. She was Diane Marie Callahan, and she loved Frank Sinatra, and she could make soup out of nothing, and she laughed like the whole world was funny, even when nothing was. I remember the laugh, Stone said. His voice was barely audible. Do you remember the last time you heard it? Stone didn't answer, because he did remember, and the memory was a blade he had been avoiding for 35 years. She laughed the morning of the day she collapsed, Maggie said. I was getting ready for school. You were looking for your other shoe. And she stood in the kitchen and laughed because you were hopping around on one foot with a piece of toast in your mouth. She laughed so hard she had to hold onto the counter. Stone pressed his fist against his forehead. That was the last normal morning, Maggie said. By that afternoon, she was on the floor of a restaurant with broken plates around her and an ambulance on the way. Stop. You called me, Ryan. You asked. I know, just Give me a second. Silence. Snow against the window, the distant sound of a train somewhere in the dark. I should have done more, Stone said. I should have known. You were 8. I should have known anyway. That's not how it works. Children aren't supposed to save their parents. That's not the deal. The deal is the other way around. The deal failed. Yeah, Maggie said, it did, but not because of you. And not because of me. It failed because she was alone, because nobody stepped in, because the world looked at a single mother with 2 kids and decided she wasn't their problem. Stone thought about Emily, about the way the diner had been watching her all night without a single person doing anything until he stood up, about how easy it is to see suffering and convince yourself it's someone else's responsibility. I gave her an address, Stone said. The warehouse. She's going tomorrow. Good. I need to make sure she actually goes. Then make sure. It's not that simple. I can't just show up. I scared her tonight. She looked at me like I was a threat. You are a threat, Ryan. To most people. That's the life you chose. I didn't choose it. It chose me. That's what you tell yourself. But you walked into that clubhouse at 19 years old with 2 fists and a death wish, and you didn't leave for 23 years. That was a choice. Stone wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't form. Maggie had always been the one person who could disarm him completely, not with volume, but with precision. She didn't shout, she just told the truth, and the truth was always sharper than anything he could throw back. What do you want me to say? He asked. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to do something. Not for that woman. You already did that. For yourself. For the boy you were. For the man you keep pretending you're not. And what man is that? The one who cried when Mom's cat died. The one who drew pictures of houses he wanted to build for her someday. The one who held her hand every night until she fell asleep because he knew she was scared even when she didn't say it. Stone's breath caught. That boy is still in there, Maggie said. He's been in there this whole time, and tonight a kid in a diner found him. Stone couldn't speak, not because he didn't have words, but because the ones he had were trapped behind something massive. A wall he had spent his entire adult life constructing, brick by brick, year by year, until it was so high and so thick that even he forgot what was behind it. But Caleb's question had put a crack in that wall, and Maggie's voice was pushing through it. I have to go, Stone said suddenly. Ryan, I'm not running, I need to sit with this. Promise me something. What? Call me again. Not in 3 years, not when something breaks you open. Just call me. On a Tuesday. For no reason. Can you do that? Stone swallowed. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Maggie. Yeah? I'm sorry. For the things I said last time. For the years I didn't call. For all of it. Maggie was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thick but steady. You don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself one. Start there. The line went dead. Stone sat in the silence of his room, holding the phone against his chest like it still carried her voice. He sat there for a long time, long enough for the snow to pile against the window ledge, long enough for the train to pass, and the night to deepen, and the world to go completely still. Then he did something he hadn't done since he was 14 years old. He cried. Not the way men cry in movies, one tear, one moment, then composure. He cried the way a person cries when a dam breaks, full body, no sound at first, then all sound. His shoulders shook. His hands covered his face. His breath came in jagged, violent bursts that tore through his chest like they had been trapped there for decades. Because they had. He cried for Diane, for the woman who laughed in the kitchen and collapsed on a restaurant floor and weighed 93 pounds when her heart finally quit. He cried for the boy who ate every plate she gave him without knowing he was eating her life. He cried for Maggie, who starved herself at 12 to save a mother she couldn't save. He cried for the years he spent running, the roads, the fights, the patches, the brotherhood that filled the shape of a family without ever being one. And he cried for Emily Carter, because she was doing it right now, right this moment, in a motel room somewhere with her children pressed against her. She was doing exactly what Diane did, giving everything, keeping nothing, disappearing one meal at a time. He wiped his face with both hands. He stood up. He walked to the bathroom and ran cold water over his wrists until the shaking stopped. He looked at himself in the mirror. A man in his mid-40s with a blonde beard going gray and hands that had broken things and built things in equal measure. A man the world called stone because he never flinched. Tonight, he flinched, and it didn't make him weaker. It made him something he hadn't been in a very long time. Human. Christmas morning came without ceremony. Emily woke to Sophie's hand on her face. "Mom! Mom, wake up! It's Christmas!" Emily opened her eyes. For a split second, she forgot where she was. Then the motel ceiling came into focus, and the weight of everything returned. But not as heavy as before. Something had shifted in the night, and the load felt different. Not lighter exactly, but shared, like someone else was carrying a corner of it. "Merry Christmas, baby," she whispered. "Is Santa coming?" Sophie asked. Emily's heart clenched. She had nothing. No gifts, no tree, no stockings. She had spent the last of her money at the diner, and the only thing she had to offer her children on Christmas morning was the leftover food Gail had packed. Before she could answer, Caleb spoke from the other bed. "Santa knows we move, Soph. Sometimes presents come late when you move. He has to update his list." Sophie considered this with the seriousness of an 8-year-old evaluating a critical fact. That makes sense, she decided. He has a lot of houses. Emily looked at Caleb. He looked back at her. And in that look was everything. The lie he had just told to protect his sister, the maturity it required, and the silent agreement between mother and son that some truths are carried together, in private, where they can't hurt the people who aren't ready for them. "Let's have breakfast," Emily said. She pulled out the bags Gail had packed. Cold pancakes, wrapped bacon, 2 containers of scrambled eggs, a slice of cherry pie in a foam box. She divided the food onto the room's one usable surface, the small desk by the window, and this time, she served herself a plate too. Caleb watched her take the first bite. His whole body relaxed, like a soldier hearing the all-clear signal. "Good?" he asked. "Really good," Emily said, and she meant it. They ate together, all 3 of them, sitting cross-legged on the beds with paper plates balanced on their knees, eating cold diner food on Christmas morning in a motel room that smelled like old carpet and radiator heat. It was the best meal Emily had eaten in 14 months. Not because of the food, because of what it meant. She was choosing to stay. After breakfast, Emily pulled the card from the nightstand. She stared at the address. Her stomach tightened. The old resistance rose. The voice in her head that said accepting help meant admitting failure. That walking into that warehouse meant confessing to the world that she couldn't do this alone. But Caleb was watching her, and she had made a promise. She put the card in her pocket. "Get your coats," she said. "Where are we going?" Sophie asked. "Somewhere good." They drove north. The roads were quiet. Christmas morning, everything closed. The world wrapped in white silence. Emily followed the address on the card, turning onto streets she didn't recognize, passing buildings she had never noticed. The warehouse sat at the end of a gravel road. It didn't look like much. A metal building with a painted door and a hand-lettered sign that read, "Community Supply." No logos, no banners, no institutional coldness. Just a door. Emily parked. She sat in the car for a full minute, both hands on the wheel. "Mom?" Sophie asked from the back seat. "I'm okay, just give me a second." Caleb reached forward and put his hand on her shoulder. He didn't say anything, he just held on. Emily took a breath, then another. Then she opened the door. A woman met them before they reached the entrance. Mid-50s, stocky, with short gray hair and a face that was all warmth. She wore a red flannel shirt and work boots and moved like a person who had been on her feet since before dawn. "You must be Emily," the woman said. Emily stopped. "How did you—" "Stone called this morning. I'm Rita. He told me to expect you." Emily's eyes filled, not with sadness, with something closer to disbelief. He had remembered. He had followed through. A stranger had made a promise in a diner at 10 o'clock at night, and by 9 o'clock the next morning, he had made sure that promise was real. "Come inside," Rita said. "We've got everything you need." "I don't even know what I need," Emily whispered. Rita smiled, not pitying, knowing. "That's okay, honey, we do." They walked in. Sophie grabbed Emily's hand. Caleb walked slightly ahead, scanning, assessing, always the guard. Rita led them through the warehouse, talking steadily in a voice that was warm without being soft. She explained how it worked. No applications, no income verification, no judgment. You came, you took what you needed, you left. If you needed more, you came back. If you wanted to volunteer later, you could. If you didn't, nobody asked. "Stone set this up?" Emily asked. "Stone and the chapter. 8 years now. Every winter they fund it. Every month they restock it. Most people in this town don't even know it's connected to the club, and the boys prefer it that way." "Why?" Rita stopped walking. She turned to Emily with an expression that was careful and honest. "Because the world has already decided what men like that are. And the boys learned a long time ago that if you put a Hell's Angels patch next to a bag of groceries, people don't see the groceries, they see the patch. So they took the patch off the building and let the groceries speak." Emily looked around the warehouse. Shelves of canned goods, boxes of diapers, racks of children's coats, a corner dedicated to school supplies, another corner with a handwritten sign that said, "Job Board," covered in index cards. This wasn't charity. This was architecture. Someone had designed this place with the same care a person uses to build a home. Every detail intentional. Every resource positioned where a struggling family would find it without having to ask. "He built this because of his mother," Emily said quietly. Not a question. Rita looked at her sharply. "He told you about Diane?" "Some of it." Rita was silent for a moment. Then she said something that made Emily's knees buckle. "You're the first person he's ever told. In 8 years of running this place, he's never once told anyone why. Not the members, not the volunteers, not me. He just shows up, stocks the shelves, writes the checks, and leaves." Emily pressed her hand against her mouth. "Whatever happened in that diner last night," Rita said, "it cracked something open in him that's been sealed shut for a very long time." Sophie tugged Emily's sleeve. "Mom, look, they have books." Emily looked down at her daughter, standing in front of a shelf of donated children's books with her eyes wide and her mouth open. And something inside Emily's chest unlocked. Not hope. She had found that last night. Something beyond hope. Possibility. The feeling that tomorrow could be built instead of just survived. "Pick one," Emily said. "Really? Anyone?" "Anyone you want." Sophie's hands hovered over the shelf like she was choosing a treasure. Caleb appeared beside her, pretending not to care, but his eyes moved across the spines with the same hunger. "You too, Caleb," Emily said. He looked at her. His guard dropped for just a second, long enough for her to see the boy underneath, the one who still wanted things, who still hoped, who had been carrying so much weight that he had forgotten he was allowed to want something for himself. He reached out and pulled a book from the shelf. He held it against his chest without showing her the cover. "Good choice?" Emily asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Good choice." Rita walked Emily through the rest of the warehouse. She loaded bags of groceries into the car. She gave Emily a list of phone numbers, a free legal clinic, a child care co-op, a women's employment program that placed mothers in jobs with flexible hours. At the door, Rita handed Emily one last thing, an envelope. What's this? First month's rent. Stone dropped it off before you got here. Emily stared at the envelope. I can't accept this. You can, and you will, because that man drove 60 miles at 6 in the morning on Christmas Day to make sure this was here when you arrived. And if you hand it back, I'm going to have to call him and tell him you said no. And honestly, I'd rather not have that conversation. Emily almost laughed. It came out strangled, half sob, half something lighter. She took the envelope. Tell him thank you, Emily said. Tell him I'll pay it back. Rita shook her head. He doesn't want it back. He never does. But if you want to thank him, do one thing. What? Eat dinner tonight with your kids at the same table, all 3 plates full. Emily nodded. She couldn't speak. She walked to the car, loaded the bags, buckled her children in, and sat behind the wheel with both hands shaking and the envelope in her lap. Sophie was already reading her book. Caleb sat quietly, his own book still pressed against his chest. Mom? Yeah, Caleb? This is the best Christmas we've ever had. Emily broke. She leaned forward, pressed her face into her hands, and cried. Not from pain, from the overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful realization that her son, her serious, careful, too old for his age son, had just said the most honest thing anyone had said all year. They had no tree, no presents, no house, no father. But they had each other. They had food. They had a door that someone had opened for them when every other door was closed. And Caleb was right. It was the best Christmas they had ever had. Emily wiped her eyes. She started the car. She pulled onto the gravel road, and as the warehouse disappeared in her rearview mirror, she felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Direction. Not wandering, not fleeing, not drifting from one crisis to the next. For the first time since Kevin walked out and took everything with him, Emily Carter knew where she was going. She was going forward. 3 weeks passed. Emily moved out of the motel on January 3rd. Not into a house, she wasn't there yet, but into a small apartment on the west side of Bozeman that Rita had connected her to through the Women's Employment Network. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a stove that actually worked, and a lock on the front door that didn't need a chair behind it. The rent was covered for the first month. After that, it was hers to carry. But for the first time in over a year, the weight felt possible. She started work on January 6th, a front desk position at a physical therapy clinic. Not glamorous, not high-paying, but steady. 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, with health insurance that kicked in after 90 days. The clinic manager, a woman named Joan, had hired Emily within 15 minutes of the interview. You're organized, you're punctual, and you didn't flinch when I told you the copier jams every 3rd page, Joan had said. That tells me everything I need to know. Emily almost told her that after 14 months of surviving on nothing, a jammed copier felt like a vacation, but she kept that to herself. Some stories aren't for job interviews. The twins started at their new school on January 8th. Sophie adjusted immediately. She had always been the adaptable one, the child who could walk into any room and find someone to talk to. Within 3 days, she had a best friend named Lily and a favorite lunch table and a teacher she described as the nicest person in the whole state of Montana. Caleb was different. Caleb sat in the back row. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't talk to the other kids at recess. He ate lunch alone, reading the book he had taken from the warehouse, a worn copy of Hatchet by Gary Paulson, a story about a boy who survives alone in the wilderness with nothing but a small axe and his own determination. Emily noticed. She asked him about it every evening, gently, carefully, the way you approach a wound that hasn't finished healing. How was school today? Fine. Did you talk to anyone? No. Do you want to talk to anyone? Not really. Caleb, it's okay too. I said I'm fine, Mom. He wasn't fine. Emily knew it. But she also knew that pushing Caleb was like pushing a door that only opened from the inside. You could stand outside and knock forever, but until he was ready, that door would stay shut. She called Gail one Thursday evening after the kids were in bed. "He won't talk to anyone," Emily said. "Not at school, not at home. He answers my questions with one word and then goes back to his book. It's like he's still in survival mode and he doesn't know how to turn it off." Gail listened the way she always did, fully, without interrupting, and then said the thing Emily needed to hear but didn't want to. "He spent months watching you disappear, Em. That kind of thing doesn't just stop because you moved into a new apartment. He's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. He's still checking to see if this is real." "How do I show him it's real?" "You keep eating, you keep showing up, you keep being there, and you give him time. That boy has been standing guard over you for over a year. He doesn't know how to stand down yet, but he will. When he trusts that you're staying, he'll let go." Emily hung up and sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet. She could hear Caleb breathing in the next room, that slow, measured breathing he did when he was pretending to sleep. "I know you're awake," she called softly. Silence, then a rustling of sheets. "I'm not," Caleb said. Emily smiled, the first real smile she'd felt in weeks. "Good night, baby." "Good night, Mom." A pause, then so quiet she almost missed it. "I'm glad we're here." Emily pressed her hand against her chest. "Me too, Caleb. Me too." On the other side of the state, Stone was falling apart. Not visibly, not in the ways people would notice. He still showed up to church runs and chapter meetings. He still rode lead. He still spoke in that low, measured voice that made men twice his size pay attention. From the outside, nothing had changed. But from the inside, everything was different. The phone call with Maggie had opened something he couldn't close. Memories he had buried were surfacing at random. Not in dramatic waves, but in small, ambush-like moments. The smell of canned soup in a gas station, a woman's laugh at a rest stop, a kid in a parking lot reaching for his mother's hand. Each one hit him like a blade between the ribs. He started sleeping less, 2 hours, sometimes 3. He would lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, and his mother's face would be there. Not the blurred version, the sharp one, the one Maggie had brought back into focus. Wrench noticed first. "You look like hell," Wrench said at a Tuesday meeting, "and I mean that in the most respectful way possible. I'm fine." "You've been fine for 3 weeks. Fine doesn't usually come with bags under the eyes and a 2-pack-a-day habit." "Drop it, Danny." "You called me Danny again. That's twice now. You only use my real name when something's wrong." Stone looked at him, hard, the kind of look that had ended conversations and started fights. But Wrench didn't flinch. 5 years of riding with Stone had taught him the difference between a real threat and a man trying to scare you away from the truth. "I'm asking as a friend," Wrench said, "not as a member, as your friend. What's going on?" Stone didn't answer for a long time. They were sitting at a table in the back of the clubhouse, the kind of scarred wooden table that had absorbed decades of beer and argument and the occasional fist. The other members had cleared out. It was just them. "I talked to my sister," Stone said. "You have a sister?" Have. It's complicated." "What'd she say?" "Things I wasn't ready to hear." "Like what?" Stone picked at a groove in the table with his thumbnail, a nervous habit he thought he'd killed years ago. "She told me our mother starved to death. Not in those words, but that's what it was. She told me Maggie, my sister, she was starving herself too. At 12. Eating less so Mom would eat more. And it didn't work because Mom just gave Maggie's share to me." Wrench sat back in his chair. His face did something Stone had never seen before. It went completely still. No jokes, no deflection, no trademark grin, just stillness. "I ate every plate my mother gave me," Stone continued. "Every single one. For years. And the whole time she was dying. And the whole time my sister was watching. And I didn't see any of it." You were a kid, Stone. Everyone keeps saying that, like being a kid is an excuse. Like being small means you're blind. It doesn't mean you're blind. It means you trusted your mother. That's not a failure. That's what's supposed to happen. Well, it killed her. Wrench leaned forward. No, poverty killed her. Being alone killed her. A system that doesn't catch people when they fall killed her. Your trust didn't kill her, and your hunger didn't kill her, so stop carrying that. Stone looked up. His eyes were red, not from crying, from the effort of not crying, from 3 weeks of holding everything in while it ate him alive. I don't know how to stop carrying it, he said. I've been carrying it for 35 years. It's part of my skeleton now. If I put it down, I don't know what holds me up. Wrench was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised both of them. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you need to fall down so you can figure out how to stand up without it. Stone stared at him. Since when did you get smart? I've always been smart. You just never listen because I'm pretty and it distracts you. Stone almost laughed. It came out as a sharp exhale through his nose, the closest thing to laughter he'd produced in weeks. I called Rita, Stone said. The woman went to the warehouse. She took the groceries, the rent money, all of it. That's good. Rita said the kids looked healthy. The boy was quiet, the girl was happy, and the mother was eating. So it worked. This time. What do you mean, this time? Stone's voice dropped. There are 100 Emily Carters out there, 1,000, right now, tonight, sitting in motels and cars and shelters with their kids, doing exactly what my mother did. And we funded one warehouse in one town in one state. That's not enough. Wrench studied him. You want to do more. I need to do more. Okay, what are you thinking? I'm thinking about expanding, more warehouses, more towns, maybe a network, something that doesn't rely on one chapter's funding, something bigger. That's a hell of an ambition for a man who says he doesn't think past tomorrow. I'm trying to think past tomorrow. I'm just not very good at it yet. You'll learn. You're stubborn enough. Stone rubbed his face with both hands. The exhaustion was bone deep, the kind that sleep couldn't touch because it wasn't physical. It was the tiredness of a man who had spent his entire life running in one direction and was now trying to turn around. There's something else, Stone said. What? Maggie asked me to call her, regularly, not just when something breaks, just to talk. Are you going to? I already did, twice this week. Wrench's eyebrows lifted. And it's weird. We talk about normal things, groceries, weather. She told me about her daughter's school play. I told her about the new prospect who can't change a tire. It's just ordinary. Ordinary sounds nice. It terrifies me. Why? Stone looked at Wrench with an honesty that stripped the room bare. Because ordinary is what I had before everything went wrong. And every time I start to feel it again, I wait for the floor to drop. Wrench nodded slowly. He understood. Not because he had the same story. His was different. His own flavor of damage. But because every man at that table, every man in that club, had some version of the same wound. The fear that good things are temporary, that comfort is a setup, that the moment you relax is the moment everything gets taken. The floor's not going to drop, brother, Wrench said. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I know that living like it will is the same as it already dropping. You're falling either way. Might as well fall towards something instead of away from it. Stone sat with that, turning it over in his mind the way he turned the card in his pocket, the same card he'd written for Emily, identical to the one he kept for himself, as a reminder that he had done something good, and the world hadn't punished him for it. I want to see her, Stone said abruptly. Wrench blinked. The mother? Emily? Yeah. Why? I need to know she's okay. Not from Rita, not from a phone call. I need to see it. Stone, you show up at that woman's door in a Hell's Angels vest. You're going to undo everything you did for her. I know that. So what's the plan? I don't have one. Great, that's been working out really well for you so far. Stone stood up. He put both hands on the table and leaned forward. I'll figure it out. I just need to see that she made it, that the kids are eating, that what happened to my mother isn't happening to her. And then I'll walk away. Wrench looked at him for a long time. You sure about the walking away part? Stone didn't answer, because the truth was he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure about anything anymore. The certainty that had defined his life, the rules, the codes, the rigid structure of the club, all of it felt thinner now, like armor that had been worn too long and was starting to show the skin underneath. He left the clubhouse and rode east. No destination, just movement. The highway stretched out in front of him, white and empty, and for the first time in 23 years, the road didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a habit, a reflex, the thing he did when he didn't know what else to do. He rode for 2 hours. He stopped at a gas station. He bought a cup of coffee from a machine and stood in the parking lot drinking it, watching trucks pass on the interstate. His phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. Talked to a friend in Bozeman. She works at a school. Says there's a new boy in 3rd grade who reads at lunch alone. Quiet. Serious. Sound familiar? Stone stared at the screen. Maggie sent a second text. She says the boy's mother picks him up every day at 3:15. Never late. Always smiling. Always holds his hand walking to the car. Stone's throat tightened. A third text. She's eating, Ryan. I asked. She eats lunch with the front desk staff every day. Full meals. My friend checked. Stone pressed the phone against his forehead and closed his eyes. She was eating. Emily Carter was eating. She was showing up for her kids, holding their hands, eating full meals. She was alive in the way that mattered, not just breathing, but living, choosing to stay, choosing to be present. The thing that killed his mother was not killing Emily Carter. He had changed the pattern, not alone. Gail helped. Rita helped. The chapter helped. Emily helped herself. But Stone had been the one who stood up. He had been the first one to walk across that diner floor, and everything that followed, the food, the warehouse, the apartment, the job, all of it started with a man who heard a child's question and refused to look away. He texted Maggie back. Thank you. She replied instantly. Come to Portland. Meet your niece. She's in a school play next month. She plays a tree. It's not great acting, but the costume is amazing. Stone laughed, a real laugh, full and sudden, breaking out of him like sunlight through a crack in a wall. It startled him, the sound of his own laughter, unguarded, unfamiliar, like hearing a language he used to speak but had forgotten. He typed back, I'll be there. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Maggie's response, I'll believe it when I see you, little brother, but I'll set a place at the table just in case. Stone pocketed his phone. He stood in that gas station parking lot for another minute, watching the trucks, feeling the cold, letting the coffee go lukewarm in his hand. Then he got on his bike and turned north. Not away from something this time, toward it, toward Bozeman, toward the woman and the children and the question that had cracked him open. Not to interfere, not to insert himself into a life that wasn't his, but to close the circle. To stand in the same town where his mother's story almost repeated itself and see with his own eyes that this time the ending was different. He owed himself that. He owed Diane that. 60 miles out, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. He pulled over and answered. Is this Stone? A woman's voice. Familiar, but he couldn't place it. Who's asking? It's Emily. Emily Carter. Rita gave me this number. I hope that's okay. Stone's hand tightened on the phone. It's okay. I wanted to call you. I've wanted to call you for 3 weeks, but I didn't know what to say, and I was scared you wouldn't remember me. I remember you. I'm calling because my son did something today, and I didn't know who else to tell. What did he do? Emily's voice cracked, not from sadness, from something warmer. He made a friend, his first friend since we moved, a boy named Marcus. They sat together at lunch. Caleb shared his book with him. He came home and talked for 20 minutes straight about this kid, and I just stood in the kitchen crying because I haven't heard him talk that much in a year. Stone didn't say anything. He couldn't. His throat had closed completely. And tonight at dinner, Emily continued, Sophie asked if we could say grace. We've never said grace. We're not even religious, but she wanted to thank somebody for the food, and she didn't know who else to thank, so she said, "Thank you, Stone, for making sure Mommy eats." Stone pressed his fist against the gas tank of his bike. His chest heaved once, then again. "I'm eating, Stone," Emily said. "Every meal, every day. I'm sitting at the table with my kids and I'm eating. And I wanted you to know that because you're the reason I started again." Stone's voice came out rough, broken, barely above a whisper. "That's all I needed to hear." "Are you okay?" Emily asked. "You sound—" "I'm okay. I'm better than I've been in a long time. Thank you for everything, for the diner, for the warehouse, for the rent, for all of it. You don't owe me thanks. I know I don't owe it. I'm giving it anyway. That's how gratitude works." Stone almost smiled. She was stronger than she knew, stronger than she had been in that booth 3 weeks ago, gripping a coffee cup she couldn't afford to refill. Something had changed in her voice, a steel that wasn't there before. Not hardness, resolve. "Take care of those kids," Stone said. "I will. Take care of yourself." "I'm working on it." Emily laughed softly. "That's exactly what Caleb says when I ask him to clean his room. Smart kid. The smartest. He gets it from me." The line went quiet, not awkward, full. The kind of silence that happens between two people who have said everything that needed saying and are just standing in the space where the words used to be. "Goodbye, Stone." "Goodbye, Emily." He hung up. He sat on his bike in the cold for a long time, holding the phone in his lap, letting the engine idle beneath him. Then he pulled back onto the highway, and for the first time in his life, Ryan Callahan rode without running. Stone arrived in Portland on a Friday evening in February. He almost didn't go. 3 times he packed a bag. 3 times he unpacked it. The 4th time, Wrench showed up at his door unannounced, saw the open duffel on the bed, and blocked the doorway with his arms crossed. "You're going," Wrench said. "I didn't say I wasn't. Your bag's been packed and unpacked so many times the zipper's about to file for divorce. You're going. Get on your bike. Ride north. See your sister. Watch your niece be a tree. Come back. It's not complicated." "Everything's complicated. Only because you make it that way. Go." Stone went. The ride took 7 hours. He stopped once for gas and twice for coffee, and the entire time his chest felt like it was being compressed by something invisible. Not fear exactly, something worse, anticipation. The terrifying possibility that Maggie would open the door and he would feel something he couldn't control. He pulled into her driveway at 6:15, a small house on a quiet street, a bicycle in the yard, a welcome mat that said, "Come in, we're awesome." He stared at that mat for a full minute. The front door opened before he could knock. Maggie stood there, 50 years old, short hair, their mother's eyes, that same hazel green that Stone saw every time he accidentally looked at his own reflection too long. She didn't say hello. She didn't say come in. She walked down the 3 porch steps, crossed the driveway, and wrapped her arms around her brother so hard he staggered backward. "You came," she said into his chest. "I said I would. You've said a lot of things over the years, Ryan. I know. I'm trying to mean them now." She pulled back. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set, the same way their mother used to look when she was feeling too much and refusing to let it win. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks. I mean it. You look like you haven't slept in a month. 6 weeks, but who's counting?" She took his arm and pulled him inside. The house smelled like garlic and bread and something sweet baking. Sounds came from the kitchen, a child's voice singing off-key, pots clanking, a man's low laugh. "That's David," Maggie said, "my husband. And that's Grace, your niece. She's 9. She has your temper and my brain, which is either the best or worst combination in human history." Stone stopped walking. "She knows about me?" "She knows she has an uncle who rides motorcycles and lives far away. She's been asking about you for 3 years." "What did you tell her?" "That you were busy, that you'd come when you were ready." Maggie looked at him. "Are you ready?" Stone's hands were shaking. He shoved them into his pockets. "No." "Good. Neither was I when I had her. Turns out readiness is overrated. You just show up and figure it out." She led him into the kitchen. Grace was standing on a step stool at the counter, covered in flour, holding a wooden spoon like a sword. She had Maggie's sharp features and dark hair, but when she turned and looked at Stone, her eyes were pure Callahan, wide, curious, and absolutely unafraid. "Are you Uncle Ryan?" she asked. "Yeah." "You're really big." "Yeah." "Can you reach the top shelf?" "Mom can't, and Dad pretends he can, but he uses a chair." David, a tall, thin man with glasses and paint-stained hands, raised his coffee mug in greeting. "She's not wrong. I absolutely use a chair." Stone reached up and pulled down the mixing bowl Grace was pointing at. He handed it to her. She inspected it with the seriousness of a surgeon examining equipment. "This'll work," she said. "You can stay." Maggie pressed her hand over her mouth. David put his arm around her, and Stone stood in his sister's kitchen, holding nothing, carrying nothing, being nothing except an uncle, handing a bowl to a child who had decided he was acceptable. It was the most terrifying and beautiful moment of his life. They ate dinner at a table set for 5. Maggie had put out the good plates, the ones with the blue rim that their mother used to talk about owning someday. Stone recognized the pattern. Diane had circled them in a catalog once, years ago, showing Maggie. "When we have our real house," she had said, "we'll eat on plates like these." Stone touched the rim of his plate. Maggie watched him. "I found them at an estate sale," she said quietly. "Same pattern. I almost didn't buy them because I knew I'd think of her every time I used them." "Why did you buy them?" "Because she deserved to be thought of." Stone nodded. His throat was tight. Grace said grace before dinner. Not a formal prayer, a rambling, enthusiastic monologue that included thanks for the bread, the garlic, her upcoming role as a tree, the fact that Uncle Ryan was finally here, and her friend Sophia's new hamster, whose name was Pancake. Everyone said amen. Stone said it half a beat late, like a man learning a language he had once spoken fluently. They ate, they talked. David asked Stone about the road, not the club, not the life, just the road. And Stone found himself talking about landscapes and weather and the sound a highway makes at 4 in the morning when you're the only one on it. Grace asked him 14 questions in rapid succession, including whether motorcycles could fly, whether he had ever met a bear, and whether he could teach her to whistle with 2 fingers. "Maybe after dinner," Stone said. "Promise?" "Promise." Maggie kicked him gently under the table. He looked at her. She was smiling. Not the careful smile she had worn at the door, but a real one, the kind that reaches all the way back to childhood. After dinner, Stone taught Grace to whistle. It took 11 tries. On the 12th, she produced a sound so shrill that David's coffee sloshed out of his mug, and Maggie covered her ears. "I did it!" Grace screamed. "You did it," Stone said, and he was laughing. Full, open, unreserved laughter. The kind he had heard once from his mother in a kitchen long ago, and had spent 35 years believing he would never make again. Maggie found him later on the back porch. Grace was in bed. David was doing dishes. The night was cold and clear, and Stone was sitting on the steps with his hands clasped between his knees. She sat beside him. "How do you feel?" she asked. Like I've been holding my breath for 23 years, and I just exhaled. That's what family does. It reminds you to breathe. I forgot, Maggie. I forgot what this feels like. You didn't forget. You buried it. There's a difference. Forgetting is permanent. Burying means it's still there. You just have to dig. Stone was quiet for a moment. I want to tell you something. Okay. I've been thinking about Mom a lot since Christmas, since the diner, since our phone call. And I realized something I should have realized a long time ago. What? She didn't fail. Everyone talks about what happened to her like it was a failure, like she couldn't keep it together, like she let herself go, like she made bad choices. But she didn't fail. She succeeded. She kept us alive, both of us. She did exactly what she set out to do. The only person she didn't save was herself. Maggie's eyes filled. And I spent my whole life angry at her for that, Stone continued. Angry that she left me. Angry that she chose us over herself. Angry that she didn't ask for help. But that anger was never really about her. It was about me. Because I couldn't save her. I was right there eating every plate she gave me, and I couldn't see what was happening. Ryan, let me finish. Please. Maggie pressed her lips together and nodded. I met a woman on Christmas Eve who was doing the same thing. Same sacrifice, same silence, same slow disappearance. And her son saw it. He was 8 years old and he saw what I couldn't see at 8. He asked the question I should have asked. And because he asked it, I was able to do the thing I couldn't do for Mom. Stone's voice broke. He let it break. He didn't try to fix it or hide it or swallow it back down. I couldn't save Diane Callahan, but I could save Emily Carter. And I know that doesn't undo what happened. I know it doesn't bring Mom back, but it means something. It has to mean something, because if it doesn't, then what was all this pain for? Maggie reached over and took his hand. She held it the way their mother used to hold it, firm, warm, unshakable. It means everything, Ryan. It means Mom's story didn't end in that hospital. It carried forward, through you, through what you did, through that woman and those kids and every meal they'll eat from now on, because you stood up when nobody else would. Stone gripped her hand. Mom would be proud of you, Maggie said. Not because you're tough, not because you survived, because you remembered, because you let that little boy's question reach you when you could have walked away. That's her and you, Ryan. That's Diane. Stone pressed his sister's hand against his forehead. He held it there. He breathed. And in that breath was every mile he had ever ridden, every wall he had ever built, every year he had spent believing that hardness was the same as strength. It wasn't. Hardness was just fear wearing armor. Strength was this, sitting on a porch in Portland, holding his sister's hand, letting himself be seen. He stayed 3 days. He watched Grace's school play. She was, objectively, not a great tree. She stood slightly off-center, wobbled twice, and delivered her one line. I am the oldest oak in the forest. With the enthusiasm of a child announcing a roller coaster ride. Stone clapped louder than anyone in the auditorium. Maggie elbowed him. He didn't care. He helped David fix a leaking faucet. He learned that David was a high school art teacher who painted watercolors on weekends and had once driven cross-country in a van he converted himself. They had more in common than Stone expected. Different roads, same restlessness. On his last morning, Grace handed him a drawing. She had made it the night before, staying up past her bedtime with a flashlight and a box of colored pencils. It showed a man on a motorcycle. Next to him, a woman and 2 children. Above them, a single word in wobbly capital letters. Family. That's you, Grace said, pointing to the motorcycle man. And that's the people you helped. Mom told me the story. Stone looked at Maggie. She shrugged. She asked, I told her the version a 9-year-old could understand. What version is that? That her uncle helped a family who was hungry, and that it changed him. Grace tugged Stone's sleeve. Did it? Did it change you? Stone knelt down so he was eye level with her. This child who had his sister's face and his mother's eyes and a heart big enough to draw a stranger into her definition of family. Yeah, he said, it did. Are you different now? I'm trying to be. Grace considered this. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed with the full, unreserved force of a child who has decided you belong to her. Good, she whispered, because I like this version better. Stone held her, he closed his eyes, and he let himself feel the thing he had been running from for 35 years. Not pain, not loss, love. The kind that doesn't ask for armor, the kind that walks through walls. He rode home that afternoon. The highway was open, the wind was sharp, the engine hummed beneath him like a heartbeat. His phone buzzed at a rest stop. A text from Emily. Caleb got an A on his book report. He wrote about Hatchet. He said it's about a boy who survives alone, but learns he doesn't have to. His teacher cried. Stone smiled. He typed back, "Tell him Stone says, well done." A minute later, he says to tell you he's going to be a firefighter when he grows up. And Sophie says she's going to be a chef, so nobody goes hungry. Stone stared at that message for a long time. A chef, so nobody goes hungry. An 8-year-old girl who had once whispered a request for hot chocolate like it was an impossible dream was now planning a life around making sure no one felt what she had felt. That was legacy. Not the kind carved into stone or printed on paper. The kind passed from hand to hand, meal to meal, one act of stubborn, defiant kindness at a time. He typed back, "Tell Sophie the world needs more chefs like her." Then he pocketed his phone, started the engine, and pulled back onto the road. The miles passed. The sky darkened. Stars appeared. First one, then a handful, then more than he could count. He thought about Diane, about the laugh in the kitchen, about the plates she dreamed of owning, about the woman who gave everything she had and asked for nothing in return. He thought about Emily, about a mother who chose to live, about a boy who asked the question that changed everything, about a girl who dreamed of feeding the world. He thought about Maggie, about Grace, about a welcome mat that said, "Come in, we're awesome," and a table set with blue-rimmed plates, and a family that had been waiting for him to walk through the door. And he thought about himself. Ryan Callahan, Stone, a man who had believed for 23 years that the only way to survive was to become something the world couldn't break. He was wrong. The world breaks everything. That's what it does. It breaks the hard and the soft and the in-between. The question was never whether you would break. The question was what you would become afterward. Stone had become a wall. For decades, impenetrable, unmovable, safe. But walls don't eat dinner with their families. Walls don't teach their nieces to whistle. Walls don't stand up in diners on Christmas Eve and walk toward a stranger's pain because they recognize it as their own. People do that. Humans do that. And on a cold highway in Montana, under a sky full of stars that his mother once pointed out to him from the steps of a trailer in Fresno, Ryan Callahan made peace with the thing he had feared most. He was not Stone. He never was. He was his mother's son, built from sacrifice, shaped by hunger, held together by a love so fierce it survived death and distance and 35 years of silence. And that love passed from a woman who had nothing to a man who had everything to give, had traveled from a crumbling trailer in California to a diner in Montana, to a warehouse full of groceries, to an apartment where a mother and her 2 children sat at a table with 3 full plates and said grace for a man they had met only once. On a freezing Christmas Eve, an 8-year-old boy asked a question. "Why doesn't Mommy eat?" And a man who had buried his heart answered it, not with words, with action. And that action rippled outward, through a diner, through a family, through a brotherhood, through a phone call at 2 in the morning, through a drawing made by flashlight, through a book report about survival, Through a child's dream of a world where nobody goes hungry. One question, one answer, one man who chose to stop running, and a mother who chose to stay alive. That is the whole story, not of engines and leather and roads that go forever, but of a plate pushed across a table, of a wallet placed beside a salt shaker, of a hand reaching through the dark toward another hand that had forgotten it was allowed to reach back. Kindness did not come wrapped in comfort that Christmas Eve. It came in boots, in leather, and the rough handwriting of a man named Stone. And it saved 2 lives that night, 3 if you count his own.